Hi everyone.
Hi, Nicola. Hi, Johnny. Hi, Tex.
Hey, Kevin.
How are you doing?
Hello.
Hi, Johnny.
Welcome back.
Thank you. How's it been?
Some interesting sort of light on agenda meetings recently, and I think we don't even have an agenda today.
Oh, there is, because I put one together. I've just put one together, Johnny.
Lovely.
I'll paste it into the chat, and we can decide what to prioritize. I haven't managed to go through the actions text. I'll just take a quick look at those now. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything in the active notes here. Wait a minute, is it further down? October 29th to October 22nd.
So if we see here 10:15, publicize SPO participation in governance action.
Right.
Looks like raising awareness about parameter changes, which is still being done. That technical or a clerical we can fit.
Okay.
And the actions from the previous meeting on the 8th were just related to the linear layouts conversation, which is already on the agenda. So,
Okay. So I'll just pop into the chat the actions from last week. And Neil and Nicholas, you have to leave at what, 1500. So are there items you want to prioritize?
One that might miss because I saw Arno. I think Sebastian mentioned yesterday in the TSC channel that it will be nice to have a chat about antithesis. So
Okay.
we probably need to add this to the agenda, probably, especially as Arno is here. Well, he is nearby at least, because based on his cam, is not exactly here, but he's connected at least. Otherwise, regarding the prioritization, I don't have any concern. I guess on the layer status, Sebastian can give an update, so you don't need me. On the other side, I don't need to lead anything, so I'm good with whatever we want to come first.
Good. So we have on Arno as a guest.
Yep.
We could start with Arno and then allow Arno to leave us whilst we continue with the rest of the agenda. Does that work? And the linear layouts I basically put as a placeholder so we could have a catch up and further discussion. But we could also, I imagine, postpone it until next week if you and Neil are not here. Nicola, does that sound sensible?
Sounds good.
Yep. You agreed, Neil? Yeah, brilliant. So, Arno, why don't we let you kick us off with a discussion? I'll first of all, I'll formally convene the meeting. So, by my calculation, we are quorate. This is the Technical Steering Committee meeting of the 22nd of October 2025. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I make it 7 members, voting members present. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 voting members, 9 voting members present. So almost complete quorum. Great. So first item on the agenda, Arnaud, you've very kindly offered to present the status of the antithesis work to us, to explain what it's all about, and to give us an overview. Have you prepared any slides for that, or?
Not really. So I thank you for having me first. I haven't really prepared a slide, but I have a couple of things that I can show you, and I can share the links for further investigation. Just to set the stage, or to manage expectations, my my goal here is to seek guidance from the technical steering committee regarding this project, and whether or not it would make sense to keep pursuing this project and to keep working on it. And if the answer is yes, how this would be done, and how this could be done, should it be, and especially when it comes to the question of funding first of all, funding the project, both for the license fees and for the for the work around the project, to keep it usable, to make it usable, and to make it become a Cardano asset, or a Cardano community asset. Maybe just I'm going to share my screen. I think that yeah, maybe let's start with the beginning. I'm not sure who is familiar with antithesis, but antithesis is distributed systems simulation testing tool that is built by a company of the same name, and which offers the ability to test a complete system. And yeah, I will come to that, Neil, if you don't mind. I'm trying to make sure that everyone, unless everybody is familiar with antithesis, which means that I can completely skip the introduction. But if not, then maybe it might be useful to remind everyone what it is.
I think it may be useful for the recording.
Yep.
And honestly, I also don't mind to hear it again.
I will go quickly over it. Just I won't spend 10 minutes explaining. Just to give a quick recap of where we are at. So it's a distributed testing system that we have been experimenting with. In March or February, we got in touch with the team, and we started prototyping and proof of concept within the Cardano Foundation. So more precisely, with the HAL team and part of the infrastructure team. So Carl Knudsen and Livio Kopp from the CF, trying to understand whether it could be useful, and if it could be useful, how so, and what efforts, what problem exactly it solves. So the problem it solves, seems to me, for the Cardano ecosystem, is the ability to be able to run complex tests for the whole for a scaled down network, to run complex tests in an environment which is first of all deterministic. This means that we can reproduce the test, and we get the benefits from typical property-based testing that we are used to, and It also provides the ability to explore and to fuzz the environment and to fuzz the various execution paths and to inject faults, and faults which are network faults, which can be memory consumption or memory throttling, CPU throttling, chaos monkey by killing various nodes and so on. So that's what it does. We have been working on this for a few months now, and in two directions. So trying to understand if it could find issues. So we had a first phase back in April, May, where the team has been working on testing the Cardano itself, and we found a couple of issues. So some of them were expected, and we found a couple of unknown bugs. Actually, one of them I think led to the need for a patch because it was considered a security bug. Since then, we haven't done a lot of efforts on the testing side because we have been trying to work on making the tool more usable for the community at large. So not only the Cardano team, but more in the spirit of the node diversity efforts, and to make it possible to run tests or to make it easier to run tests for any team that would be interested in using the infrastructure. Because so far, until this point, it was mostly something that was reserved for. It's a SaaS system, so it has authorizations, and it can only be used by some people from within some organization and so on. So what we did was building some tooling to make that easier. And this culminated in the node diversity workshop that we had in September, where we had the first workshop with the Antithesis team, trying to understand how the tool could be useful for various node implementers. And by node implementers, we mean not only not only full node or full consensus node implementers, but also maybe data nodes, client nodes, all kind of people implementing stuff around the network. Johnny?
Do you mind showing the GitHub repository specific to Cardano on the meeting, and also for the minutes, just a link to that repository would be useful.
Yes, I will share the link in the chat for the. So
I
far,
I already have. Don't worry.
Okay, you have them. So right now the repository is in the foundation, so it's in the process. I mean, we are revamping the documentation, but most of the work and the action happens there. So that's where we have the various assets to be able to run this. We have been working on one of the things that we have been working on within my team was what we call NTCLI, which is not very good name, but well, it is what it is. The idea being that we are building a tool and a command line interface that will make it easy to trigger test run for anyone who is in control of a GitHub repository and which can control and build the assets needed to run Antithesis. And the goal of tracking and tracing those usage on the Cardano blockchain itself. So basically, what NTCLI does, that it records a test request using some on-chain and off-chain smart contract, on-chain smart contracts and an off-chain oracle and agent to read transactions and trigger. Yes, thank you, Sebastian. That's a very good one. Yeah. And the reason why is because, well, first of all, I personally think that we should dog food our development more. And second, it seems like because we have this shared resource, which is the Antithesis infrastructure, which we are paying for, it seems that it would be quite useful to be able to track the usage of this resource and to understand whether it is used and by whom it is used and why it is used for. This has some side effects around the fact that if you trigger a request for some test, then you will get some results. and we have some kind of mechanism to encrypt the results so that we don't leak test results which might potentially have a security implication. And it's only in the second stage where we can really interpret and understand the results that we can start to work with the teams or the team involved to do something. So that's where we are at. So we have this tool, and what I've started working on, and the reason why I requested to maybe present something with the technical steering committee is we have something that works. We have some relatively, I think some convincing evidence that the tool is useful. It's useful both for testing the Cardano node itself, but also it's useful for testing more widely the ecosystem by mixing and matching different kind of nodes. So we were able to run tests mixing the Amaru node and the Cardano node, but obviously, given the fact that the environment is a bit adversarial, the software needs also to be prepared for this kind of adversarial behavior. So this means that some other nodes or tools that have been built, so I mentioned some of them here, might not be at the stage where they can survive long in this environment. Yeah, and so I've started writing this document with the idea of proposing that this effort be supported and funded by the Cardano treasury itself as a community asset. So far it's been funded by the Cardano Foundation, and we have the funding until the end of this year. And now the question is, what's next? Do we care? Is it something that we want to build and to make to turn into a community-owned and community-led asset, and something that will be useful for all kind of implementers that are working with the maybe core network components? It could be, and obviously that encompasses the core team. But the core team, having been working on this for several years, they already have some internal tools, but there might be end-to-end tests that would be interesting to be able to run there. It will also be interesting potentially to as a one gate or one data point when it comes to deciding about conformance of various implementations, conformance of protocol changes that would impact potentially several clients, and so on. And yeah, so that's where we are at. I would be very happy to share all this stuff with you. So I'm going to share the documents that you have it, and you will be able to understand what's inside it. Yeah, I guess I don't want to spend too much time of your time, but that's where we are at. So my ask is to get some feedback, potentially asynchronously or offline, obviously, but yeah.
Johnny.
So there's three potential funding paths for this. Would you view this as something that would come under something like the Open Source Office tooling sustainability, or would that not be enough of funding towards the idea of what you think it would cost? Could it go through the Intersect budget process for 2026, or is it something that could be proposed directly on chain outside of Intersect's budgetary process? Which do you feel is the most
I think the option one is, I think I will answer Adam question, and it will answer a question. The license cost for Antithesis is $400,000 a year. That's license cost.
Which I think takes it outside of the maximum funding available for tooling sustainability from open source. So it would become either part of the budget for 2026 through Intersect's process or a direct on-chain proposal.
That's why I think that's why I didn't pursue the avenue of the open source funding tooling, because it seems like it's a larger share given the cost of the license.
That's just like, sorry to clarify, Arnaud, that's just the license cost. Are there operational costs as well, e.g.?
Yes. So you have everything in the documents that I will share with you, but all in all, I think that from our experience, so there is a license cost. There is some tooling maintenance cost if we agree that having this kind of tooling around makes sense. I would estimate something like around 1 FTE to keep the thing working and maintain the tool. Maybe not 1 FTE for years, but at least to put the tooling at the level where it's basically self-sustaining, and all in all, including a bit of hosting for some offline service, off-chain services and whatnot. And then there is the cost for each team to bake and define their own systems. So that's
to Adam's question about funding cost. Adam, we're talking something in the order of $500,000
yes.
to $600,000, something like that.
Yes, that's roughly the idea.
Plus the cost to the teams of complying with the antithesis requirements. Yeah, the direct cost of $500,000 or more,
something like that.
Neil.
Oh no, I stuck some questions in the chat because I
don't know if you want to answer.
I was just going to say, so to me, right? Yes, there's the get out of bed cost, which we've just discussed, $500,000, right? The thing, given I had interaction with the people doing this, I got feedback from them. The key question is it, if you put a human being's effort into this and a human's effort into some other stuff, what's the relative return on that investment? Forget about the get out of bed cost. That's really important here, because it was my impression, which I'd like to get that this was, although it did find one, it was my impression that it wasn't cost effective in that area, right? Number one, but I'd like to have that impression done. Part of that was because there was a non-trivial rate of false positives, as far as I understood. When they ran the darn thing, they got back antithesis failures, which turned out to be impossible to happen in real life due to various things. So, I mean, the false positive rate is important because that eats up a lot of human effort. I think this issue, it would be a Cardano-based resource, which brings it for those who've had any academic background, national labs or European-style lab type thing, where now you're into that one person to run it is probably an underestimate, because you've now got an administration to turn around to construct to who gets funding, who makes the decision, who gets access, who handles the contention for access to that resource. It's like you've got a big bloody telescope and you've got lots of astronomer teams competing to use it. Who's going to make the decision of who gets to use it next? Right? These are the questions I think that have to solve. Home viewing costs, is it robust in a regression environment? Can I reproduce the faults regularly if I rerun it, right? Because basically I want to be able to go back having fixed the fault and know it did. If I use it 10 times, the fault turns up twice, right? And I rerun it, I still can't. Can I always get the fault to reproduce? Is a question. It's really important. And then you mentioned conformance testing. I can't. Is this genuinely something that could scale to act as a conformance testing requirement? It can act. I don't think it can, because you're talking about, one piece. I mean, it's that sort of. Does it multiply the human being's effort being put into it? Right. To me, that's the question. Does it give that multiplier so that we're getting more for the developers? Because in some sense, the developer time is our most restricted resource. Now, they don't need to be answered now, but you were looking for input. Those are the inputs.
Thank you for that. I'm probably won't have the time to answer now, but I'm definitely taking notes and we provide thorough answers. Thank you for that. Yeah. I will write down, try to provide the answers to those questions. Probably not. To give a short answer, I think so. Yes, regarding the, I think the false positives, that's true. That was true at the initial, at the onset and the initial phase. That's definitely the case. Especially because, well, like anything, it needs a bit of tuning to the particular thing we are trying to test. We spend some effort reducing that. So right now we basically have 0 false positives. On the other hand, we are not, I mean, my team is not really in, doesn't really have the skill set or the incentive to work, to do the work that a normal or an actual QA team should do, which is actually actively trying to change bugs and bug configuration. We are more working around the tooling and the making the thing more useful and more accessible than really working on trying to find bugs in the Calm node or any other nodes for that matter. But so far, yeah, we have removed this this noise that we had initially, which was a bit annoying. And to the question about the conference testing system, I mean, it's a bit hard to answer, but as a multiplier, we clearly have a multiplying effect because we know that for I mean we have like something like a 50 or 100 ratio between the actual execution time and the I would say the amount of testing that is really run against the system because of the fact that the system runs at a much faster speed. So basically, if I may, this is, to me, Antithesis, it's something like IOSIM, but scaled up to be able to support any kind of software, not only Haskell code. That's basically what it is, with a bit more stuff and around analysis about the bugs and the various paths. They provide stuff that might be different. Sebastian?
Plus fault injection, which is nothing which IOSIM does, right? So it's deterministic simulation and reproduction.
But
then also fault injection and all of this on a system level, kind of operating system level, which is independent of
and also with time travel debugging ability. So this means that when you find a fault, you can basically travel around your system in time and in space. Of course, depending on how much tooling you have in your images, and it's still not trivial, obviously, but you can really do a lot. So it's I mean, I was thinking about the comparison in terms of the ability to play the schedule.
I was not saying that IOSIM doesn't support fault injection. I want to say this is kind of having fault injection batteries included, which IOSIM, for example, is not. But of course, things on top can do fault injection tests using IOSIM, which we are. To comment on this response on the chat. Is this technically interesting? Like, as we're a technical steering committee, is this like something which Cardano could benefit from, or is it worthless because everybody has better tools already? Like, what is our stance, or maybe what is the ask?
I think that's my ask. Ultimately, like, do you think it makes sense to pursue this effort? If you don't think it makes sense, then basically, that's at least one data point and one answer from technical experts. So we need to take action after this statement.
Neil and Nicola, I consciously need to go. So do you want to?
My point is, I'm sure if with unbounded effort and unbounded time, it's a useful tool, right? My problem is cost-benefit analysis, and my main value for this is not actually the dollars; it's the humans, right? It's the human cost, because the humans are the things we don't have enough of. That's sort of my point, right? If you want to technically, I'm sure it can explore parts of the space, but it's the whole problem with any form of walk around a random space. Whether these things are reasonable, whether they will occur in practice, are they reasonable? There's always you're reducing a risk. Is it worth that? Is it worth that investment? Always the question. And now I've got to go. Bye bye.
Nicola, do you want to quickly?
I guess the major question definitely will be as a cost-benefit ratio. I spoke with Brian. We have tried the tool during the diversity workshop, and he was quite pleased actually to see how fast he was able to spot a bug into the simulator using antithesis. So it's one evidence that we can get value out of it. Is it enough value to cover the cost of the effort? I guess it's definitely an unknown. It also depends on how much traction we could put into it. I guess, again, it comes down to, does the community want to fund this effort? And how much traction can we get out of it? And what will be the benefits of this traction afterwards? From my perspective, if we have enough money to spend this effort for 1 or 2 years, gather some evidence of the use of the tool or the lack of use of the tool, it will be quite interesting. But it's just one view among the whole community. So yeah, that was my 2 cents on this.
Thank you. Marcus.
My additional cent would be that this is also a question now to Arnaud or to all of us here. So Sebastian mentioned that everyone or the different node teams with their architecture and coding environment have already some system in place, but that's specifically for them. And this now is the question, will this antithesis or could this become, let's say, the agnostic, the neutral place where everyone, so where all the nodes can appear on a comparable place that is not very specific or, let's say, focused more on the Haskell side or on the Rust side or some other language side, but it is just more the neutral place where every node with his team and when they come out of their individual environment and then go to a public place where they also show that they work or they are bug-free or they can perform specific tests in a comparable way.
So I'd say that some general testing framework that allows comparable testing between alternative node implementations is very valuable, Marcus. The question is whether antithesis is that testing framework. It may be that it's part of a bigger test framework.
Mm-hmm. And what we've seen in the node diversity workshop is, I think everyone has been appreciating or not being upset about the level of interface or level of abstraction they have been picked, right? So antithesis says everything needs to be a Docker container. For that matter, it can be virtualized and run in this way. Some teams were picking up quite quick on this, I must say. We had the Go people very much having a Dingo node running in like a Cardano node cluster, which had been prepared by Arnaud and his team beforehand, but having this not only consensus node, but also data nodes in such a small scale, but very adversarial or hazardous environment, as I think it's very much actively fault tested. Having that up to speed quite quickly was good to see. I think the biggest question from my end is not so much about the cost benefit. It will be costing a lot in the beginning, but I think it can be, if we can make it useful, it will pay off, as it is going to be very much a system everyone can use. Of course, it should be considered, but I'm more worried about, can this be productively fault testing, right? So kind of, is it not too harsh? Can we make it more useful in terms of exploring the kinds of systematic faults we care about? Maybe also what you mentioned, Kevin, what is the right level of operational behavior we want to see from a healthy block producing node in such an environment? What kind of scenarios does it need to pass? But I think this is also to be explored and should be maybe just in scope of a first phase of, or the next phase of this. I think a small team, I heard 1 or 2 people only working on this on the CF, kind of to make this work and getting it up and running, is maybe too little to kind of really explore that fully, whether this can be done. So maybe some kind of benefit must be given to, yeah, we don't have it. Like there may be still a lot of false positives or kind of lots of unrealistic or too harsh environments and scenarios in the beginning, but this must improve in the next phase to see it like kind of for continued mid and long-term use.
Great, thanks, Sebastian. So thank you very much, Arno. Does anyone have any final comments on that? Because I'm conscious there are other things we should be discussing in this meeting.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you, Arno.
Happy to answer or answer any questions online, offline, or asynchronously. I mean, you know where to find me. So whenever and wherever you want. I'm going to. So we have some also planning next week within the Scala Foundation. So I'm also going to ask what the Scala Foundation wants to do with that, and because we initially thought that this would be useful as a tool, and it should be, but yeah, I agree that the human factor is important here because it's not magical. You still need to put the effort and the smarts and to put some thinking into what you are going to test and how you are going to testing and what you are really looking for. And this is not trivial, and the expertise to do that is not that common anyway. So thanks for listening and having.
Yeah, and we may call you back, Arno, or otherwise engage with you. Maybe set up a working group.
Yeah, sure. I'm around anyway. I'm in the Discord and everywhere, so no problem to have more discussions around this.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So should we? So I'm also conscious that Jess is here from IO. So we had an item on the agenda which was reforming the hard fork working group. I penciled Tax by that, and basically because Tax raised it within the TSC channel, but we can also take it there. So Jess, would you like to introduce yourself to the group, and then we can progress discussion on the reforming of the hard fork working group?
Yeah, I can do that. So hi, I'm Jess. I'm working at IO. And I guess taking on the role internally within IO to coordinate the hard fork release. I guess we've been talking at a high level about an up and coming intra-era hard fork, and I think we're now at a point where we're ready to sort of propose the expected features, and I guess I wanted to bring it to the group today to get some feedback on. So it was my intention to share the document ahead of time. Sorry, that hasn't been possible, but yeah, I guess that's who I am and why I'm here.
Great, thanks, Jess. So I've shared a link to the document in the channel. What I would say is formally what we should be doing here is to get input from the community on the scope, on the proposed scope of the hard fork. We shouldn't just be presenting it as a fait accompli to the community, of course, and that what we should probably be doing is to delegate to the hard fork working group to help us define that scope and to engage with the community to ensure that the scope is accepted. Does everyone agree with that? But we can look at this scope now if we want and provide some feedback on that if we wish. Tex, what's the schedule that we were talking about for restarting the hard fork working group?
I was still waiting on some additional feedback internally. Basically, there was some of the IO team or rebuilt IO team was being brought up to speed. But my understanding is working on getting something set up before the end of the year. That way we're kind of into a cadence. So probably bi-weekly or fortnightly starting soon. And then ramping up to weekly kind of December, January as needed.
So when are we expecting the hard fork to take place now, Jess? I mean, I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I've missed the release meetings.
Well, obviously, you know, that's down to the community to decide. But I was hoping that we would be in a position to put it to an on-chain vote middle of January. But obviously, all of that is down to, you know, when the features are ready, when we're in a position to push it onto test nets for people to be able to, and, you know, and hit readiness. But the hope was that, or the goal was that we would be pushing it to an on-chain vote middle of January. And the goal would be to start obviously socializing it now, getting feedback and ensuring that we haven't missed anything that is important to include in it.
Great. So what I'm saying, Jess, is obviously it depends. We need, the timing depends on the status of the delivery. But if we're looking for an early 26 potential hard fork date, I think January is possibly unrealistic. Okay, just to set the expectations.
Sure.
But it seems that what we should be doing is to convene the hard fork working group as quickly as possible, because we've only got 1 to 2 months left in 2025, and there's going to be a lot of work to do to get things prepared for a hard fork. So we shouldn't be delaying any longer, and we should be co-opting members from this group to join that. So I know Mert had originally, he'd spoken about expanding the scope of the hard fork working group to be basically release management, and I think that kind of makes sense. We should be thinking not just about the next hard fork, Jess. We should be thinking about the whole cadence of releases, about the hard fork, the Dijkstra hard fork that's coming up after this, and this should be a standing group. So it's got a cadence where we we first of all identify the scope, we agree the scope with the community, and we then ensure the development gets done that will lead to the hard fork or other release taking place.
Okay, yeah, that sounds sensible.
So I know we had a few volunteers to join that group before. Adam, you were one of them. Johnny, I think you were one of them. Is that correct?
Me too. I just raised my hand also. I would like to be part of that group when it starts again. I think we speculate even to use the release time slot, the other discussion time slot. But yeah, my hand raised is also, I was brought to my attention that some people in IO believe, we name hard forks, and there has been a proposal for naming the next upcoming hard fork in respect or kind of in response to Max van Rossem's passing recently. There was one consideration we could bring to the hard fork committee or working group right away, besides talking about the scope as proposed.
So do we like to type its name into the chat?
Of course.
For his record.
I hope I don't mistype now. Maybe there's a space between his last name to his Dutch.
Rotzen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sebastian, was that discussed with his family?
No, it was more. It was
initial idea.
Initial idea level. I think Alexi from the Ledger team brought it up. I had it in my mind too. Probably others thought about it. We had Matthew Plomin on the last hard fork, unfortunately too. We should try to make more hard forks than people dying. That would be maybe a goal. Anyhow, I think, yeah, we should discuss it with his family. That's a good point. Thanks for raising it. Okay,
great. So I think we can delegate this to the hard fork working group to progress. We've established a principle, I think, of putting the name to the community prior to the hard fork as an info action. So that's one thing that we would want to put to the hard fork working group. So rather than taking a decision on behalf of the community, we're presenting it to the community to allow them to comment on that and to agree with that or not.
Exactly, and this is also me presenting that somebody suggested it in initial thought only.
Yeah. So Adam, you're saying we need to give community tooling enough time to support the Plutus primitives. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's what we hear every single time now that there's a hard fork. This kind of ivory tower concept from IO of, well, we pushed a release, all you have to do is upgrade to it and it's good to go. We can hard fork, which doesn't work when there's new Plutus primitives that might break downstream explorers and downstream transaction building libraries and everything else, because every time the Plutus cost models change, which is what happens every time there's new Plutus primitives, it breaks all the downstream tooling. So again, if we aren't release ready today, there's almost no snowball's chance outside of an utter dire emergency that we're hard forking in January. So we definitely need to be working on longer time horizons now that we're community governed.
Absolutely, and the intention is absolutely. There's no need to rush this hard fork. I know people are keen to have it out, but there's no reason, like you said, for it to not follow proper process. And whilst January was a goal, like you said, the only way we would be hitting it in January is if we were sort of code complete within the next week or two. So whilst, that was, almost an aspiration, ultimately the timeline for the hard fork will be governed by, the community and the steering group.
Yeah, we had discussions even on the node diversity workshop, also in this group and other groups, I think, between the Cardano nodes, that's at the epicenter of the whole downstream and everything, right? So having a release candidate for that version, upcoming version, what the whole version includes, between that and the hard fork, 3 months would be a good time frame, we believe, between this very first tier 1 infrastructure. Then we have downstream tooling infrastructure sometimes needs to change, and now dApps, in this case, maybe with the Plutus primitives. I think, yeah, so I just want to voice that this has been roughly what people felt reasonable in the past in conversations I was involved in. And yeah, that is definitely a topic for the group too, the hard fork group.
Yeah, so Tex is raising a point. Alex may want to comment on that about the parameter changes. So absolutely, any parameter changes need to go to the parameter committee. For this particular hard fork, it's an intra-era hard fork, and we're not expecting it to be especially complicated, but there is still a process that has to go through, discussion process and recommendation process. Alex.
Agreed.
Yeah, and Adam, you're pointing out that we need to allow for the holiday period in this, both for the developers, but for the developers, for the downstream tooling developers, but also for those for the GREPs and SPOs who would need to vote on the hard fork itself. So we need to factor that in. That's why I was saying January is unlikely, Jess, just from where we are already.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, ultimately that's an aspiration, but we need to form the hard fork working group and obviously get feedback. I mean, the purpose for today really was to take the proposed expected features and to start gaining feedback on that and give people the opportunity to flag if there's anything like obviously missing, because I guess until we've kind of fixed the scope, it's really hard to fix the date. But yeah, January was just an aspiration, but obviously it's subject to following all of the proper processes, and there isn't that isn't a deadline, it's an aspiration. Go Tex.
So just some basic tracking at the very least from here. Maybe Jess, I can get a list from you of who all needs to be initially invited. My other assumptions or understanding as of now would be Kevin, Adam, Johnny, and Alex as optional. Sebastian, you said yourself as well, or?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested. I'm not sure what required and optional means. I think hard fork coordination group is probably open, right? So anyone who wants to learn about the next hard fork and wants to chime in should be welcome or have at least a chance to get into it?
We'll need to keep it fairly focused initially, Sebastian, but expand it out as we go.
Were there any issues with that list that I had would be the important question I was asking.
Let's take this. So I don't think we'll get a complete list in this meeting text. What I propose to do is we take this offline, and we make sure that we invite all those who are essential to the initial meeting, and any member of the technical steering committee who wishes to be involved should be able to be involved in that meeting, either the initial one or subsequent ones.
Bro.
Great. Yeah. So Alex, do you want to speak to PCP 004? This is the parameter change proposal.
Yes, I can briefly mention it. PCP 004 was initially planned to go out together with the governance action we have currently planned, which is on preprod already. There was spun up through PCP 003. PCP stands for Parameter Change Proposal. This is the formal way to talk to the parameter committee or make proposals for these parameter changes. And the Plutus cost model team reached out and said that they would like to adjust certain V2 values to match them closer to V3 ones. As with the hard fork, new ones are introduced. So the V2 cost models need to somewhat reflect also those new ones that are being introduced in the hard fork. That was probably not the best explanation, but I think you got the gist.
Great, thanks,
I
Alex.
was put on the spot too quickly.
Sorry about that. So again, conscious of the time, a few things to go through. It'd be good to get an update from you. You've just started to mention the current parameter update proposal, which is now being prepared for on-chain. Also, Johnny, a report on the disaster recovery fire drill would be great.
Yep. Which first?
Alex, are you still feeling on the spot?
It's fine.
Go ahead.
The current parameter change governance action is going really well. Ryan from Intersect helped us get it out on preview and on preprod, and the rationale is now final. All the signatures match and the hashes, and we're basically ready for go live. Ryan is the guy indeed, and I believe now we are waiting for ratification on the testnets to see the actual result of enactment, and then we hit the button on mainnet.
Yeah, and for the person, anyone watching the recording, this has changed to the max transaction execution units for the memory units for Plutus, right? So it's an increase to the execution units that are available for Plutus scripts. So it will be interesting to see the effect of that on mainnet.
Timeline-wise, we're looking at second week of November as a possible date to submit on mainnet. That depends a bit on the testnets.
Yeah, so again, you need to watch the dates because you will be certainly getting into the Christmas break period for that to be enacted, with potentially a 6-week time, voting time.
Yep.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. Johnny, do you want to update us on the fire drill?
Yeah, so we killed SansarNet last week. We did scenario 2 as a test. So we stopped all block production. So the way it works was because Mike has control over delegation, he delegated 1/5 of all stake producing delegations, the SPOs, to each of the 6 SPOs participating. So I had 1/5 of all stake. As did each of the other people. So we stopped all block production for over 24 hours, which is well over the equivalent 36 hours on mainnet. It's if you convert it with 1 epoch, it's like 7.2 hours before you hit that not able to add a block to the chain issue. We verified that it wasn't possible after 24 hours, and it just, you weren't able to get the ledger information at all and couldn't build upon the chain, so it was just locked in place. So then we took our little group of 6 people. The scenario 2 recovery method mentioned resetting the wall clocks, going back in time and running them at 10x speed, but practically there wasn't actually a method that we could find to do this. Is anybody aware of a tool that does exist that allows people to reset their wall clock back in time and run it at 10x speed across a small group of SPOs? Because this didn't seem to be an available tool.
There was tooling that Nick Clark mentioned, Johnny.
The tooling that we used was DB Synthesizer, but that is not the equivalent of running a wall clock at 10 times speed, and we weren't able to source something. And we had been asking up until the test scenario for a number of weeks, Mike and myself, what tool do we use for this?
My memory is that Nick Clark mentioned such a tool or library that you could use. I can't remember what it's called. But he
unfortunately, people not remembering what it's called and not being able to point us to using it meant that we couldn't use it. So what we did instead to recover is an alternative method, which is to use DB Synthesizer. And DB Synthesizer allows you to take a VRF key and a KES key and append to the chain up until the expected tip with a less dense chain of empty blocks. So you could rebuild the chain back up to the expected tip. And as long as the level of stake distribution in the KES and VRF keys using DB Synthesizer is enough to not have that large gap of over 7.2 hours or 36 hours in the case of mainnet, then you can recover. And we were able to recover using DB Synthesizer, but it led to a large discussion about, because DB Synthesizer is something you run locally and requires you to attach KES and VRF keys to it, would you be able to convince a series of SPOs with enough stake weight to give up their VRF key and KES key to get to that limping along density of blocks to be able to continue from where we are? So it would become a more centralized recovery method if you did that. Now, it may be that practically that's the right way to go, because the idea of synchronizing 10 times speed across the world wall clocks with block production happening without hitting a number of battles, it seems very optimistic. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it would work.
Well, the expectation, Johnny, was that nodes would be producing empty blocks. So
yes, indeed. But if they're producing empty blocks at a 10 times rate versus real time, going back in time to start doing that, and you're trying to synchronize them across the world with a small group of participants, is it likely that at a 10 times speed versus real time, you're going to be able to synchronize those clocks so that there isn't going to be battles between the empty blocks?
You don't need too many blocks to be produced.
No, I know. You just need enough density so that it meets the minimum requirement of time between each block, and it's a 36-hour requirement. So it's not so bad. You're not going to have that many clashes. But the way we were able to recover was because I had 1/5 of the stake. I was able to do it just with my own KES key and VRF key alone, and build a limping along block production. Even if you did centralize this recovery method, the good thing is it is verifiable that all those blocks in the less dense chain that get you back to recovery are all empty. So if people argue that this is a centralized recovery method, you can verify that nothing nefarious was done in the rebuilding.
What I would worry about would be SVOs handing over VRF and KES keys.
No, that was my concern in the meeting. That it's on the recording. Mike's going to put up an edited version of the multi-day meetings that we did about trying to get this recovery, and that topic came up. People wouldn't be willing to give away their VRF key. Maybe you could convince them to do a KES key and then rotate it, but it's quite unlikely even then. People are quite security conscious. Now, the thing is it possible to run DB synthesizer in such a way that people could be polled for their VRF key and KES key information without having to actually give it up to a centralized actor? If there's a way to do that, where it could just get the required details without having the private key, that would be one way to solve for this. But yeah, the thing is, we couldn't find a tool that was explicitly able to 10x the speed of Cardano node production across a small group. It just wasn't available. We'd asked multiple times before running the test, and nobody gave us an answer as how to do it. And we're not done with testing. We'll do scenario 1, we'll do different scenarios, and if people do provide us with the tooling, then we'll test the 10x speed.
Arnaud, do you want to comment?
You're muted, or your audio doesn't work.
He's gone.
Yeah, probably
Wait for him to
reconnecting.
come back and he can then fill us in.
Yeah, here it is.
Hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to say that I've been using DB synthesizer for testing purpose inside in Amaru and building testnet, and it's really not too complicated to make sure that if you have trusted parties that can communicate with each others, they can basically use this tool to share the empty blocks they are producing, so that the keys don't leave the various parties.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it wasn't clear from the help that was available in the tooling
no,
itself.
you can't do it right now because it's
Aha.
Yeah, but what I'm saying that it's not a far stretch to turn to.
Yeah, I didn't think it would be a far stretch, and
Okay.
it was definitely a topic that came up. If there was, it's in the Able chat, in the governance chat, ironically for some reason. So if you go to the Able pool Discord, you can see that being proposed by myself. Is it possible to have people hold their own KES and VRF keys and still contribute to DB synthesizer block rebuilding? Because that would be the most efficient method.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't have to run a 10 times speed node version or any of that. You just build the density required chain of empty blocks in a distributed way that could then be slowly released to the people that are part, as it goes into the relays across the network, people then would be able to build upon that chain. But yeah, so yeah, if that becomes something that the DB synthesizer can do, then that might be a better method. And if so, then the SIP might be better updated to reflect that and actually mention DB synthesizer tool as a tool and reflect the fact that it can be done in a distributed way.
Yeah. So.
And the next one, we're going to test is scenario 1, where there's 2 different forks because of a bifurcated network. So there'll be 2 versions of Cardano node chain, and then how to recover from that. So we're still doing work.
Yeah, so to answer Adam's question, it sounds to me as if the actions are to write a report to highlight lessons learned from fire drill, to carry out additional test scenarios. So this scenario 1 in particular, Johnny, and to determine whether additional tooling, either DB synthesizer or fast forwarding the clock, is necessary to carry out
It was just that we didn't even have any tool available to fast forward the clock, and it became a big discussion. Like, how do you do this? Like, do you get a specific Cardano node that's built that allows for this? Because it becomes a huge coordination effort if you do it that way, and people, different SPOs have to work in that exact synchronized tandem way. It's very much like a big ask, I would say. But if you can do DB Synth and have people build it outside of having to run 10 times speed, then it becomes easier to manage.
Yeah. So as I said, Nick Clark did mention a library to Mike that might be used and a wrapper tool might be used.
There was a utility that came up that allowed you to spoof the time to a specific service on your Linux environment, so you didn't actually change the clock on your Linux environment, just the service itself. But again, that's a lot to ask people to do and set and configure and get right and get the timing exactly right. You know, so yeah. It might need to be rewritten to use DB Synthesizer is the consensus so far.
Yep. No, that's fine. So let's so if you could maybe make a note of the action points, Johnny. Do you want to put those together, and then we can record those?
Yeah, I'll put it in the technical steering chat, just a bullet pointed list. Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Anything to add on that? I'm conscious that we're over time by 5 minutes.
Just that it worked. The method we used that wasn't the SIP method did work, and we got Santronet back up and running, and then did the workshop the next day.
Great. So that's a positive outcome, Johnny. We were able to successfully recover the
a chain that had no blocks for over 24 hours.
Yeah. So we had for an extended period of time relative to the normal rate of production. So 24 hours on Santronet is
would be the equivalent of much more than that on mainnet, well over the 36-hour requirement for it to fall apart.
Yeah, it was something like a week. I think it would be the equivalent of about a week on mainnet. So the fact that we were able to recover Cardano from a network that hadn't produced blocks for an extended period of time is extremely positive and shows the robustness in the network. And having done this, of course, we hope that we never need to use it in practice, but at least we know that we have a methodology that will work if in the worst case situation. Brilliant. Sounds very positive, very successful, good outcome, and some excellent lessons learned and some improvements to be made. Great. I'm going to call the meeting to a close. Once I've mentioned the item that Sam Leathers raised with it. So Sam is asking for input from this group to the strategy, to the Cardano strategy document. This was he's up Cardano Vision. He's asking for input on the enabling technology pillar. I will share the link to that in the chat. So if everyone could take a look at that and provide input. He's asking to raise PRs. I'm not sure whether we can coordinate quickly enough to do that, since he's planning to present this at the Cardano Summit in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. But if we can't coordinate a single PR, perhaps you can individually contribute PRs. Yeah, I found his link, which I will paste into the chat there. Do we want to try to coordinate a single PR, or is the timescale too short to do that, or individual responses better? Feed that back. Sounds like you need to feed that back directly, Adam.
I hosted a workshop in Barcelona on Saturday where I said exactly that. So it's on the record.
Right, but it probably needs to be on the PR as well. Great. So I raised it with us with this group. I'll push it in the Slack channel, and then I will take an action to look at this myself to start to put together a document that others can contribute to if they wish. Otherwise, individuals can provide responses directly. So is that okay? But I think if we try to coordinate 10 responses, discuss them in detail, and provide the feedback to Sam before the Cardano summit, there probably isn't enough time to do that. Great. I'll put something together and start to make my own comments in it and allow other people to update that, and then pass it on to Sam. Brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone. For the record, the Cardano Summit is going to be happening in Berlin on the 12th to 13th of November. So for anyone watching this, please go along. You'd be very welcome there. And Marcus, anything you want to say about it from a CF perspective?
On the summit?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I'm not prepared for it now, but there are still some places for tickets. So if you can suggest some friends to look into attending it, then it would be helpful. Other than that, the main agenda may looks like a lot of enterprise and adoption activities, but a little bit hidden. You see there are 3 masterclass rooms with governance, also with technical SBO networking topics, so everyone can find something there, even if the main agenda and the main stage doesn't look like this.
Great. So the events happening on the day before the summit proper on.
That's also, yeah, that's also, there's the workshop, sorry, not the workshop, the hackathon, that's on day 0, so before the actual 2 summit days, and it is on another venue, so it's not the summit venue itself. But what I mean is actually on the summit venue, there are also 3 masterclass rooms with, let's say, more technical or more specific topics where everyone can find something interesting for him.
Great. So thank you very much, Marcus. I hope to go myself. I haven't sorted out the travel yet, so look forward to seeing some of you in Berlin in 2-3 weeks' time. Thank you very much.
So every community, every committee member or someone with active roles and with voluntary contributions, when he wants to get a ticket, please reach out to me. I can help to get a good deal on it.
Thank you very much. So call the meeting to a close here. Any items we've not covered we'll either cover out of band or we'll leave to the next agenda, to the next meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Arno.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And talk to you all again soon.
Bye.
Bye.